The mailman told me this letter had been waiting for me for 10 years. I laughed. Until I saw the date on the envelope. I held it in my hands and couldn't understand how something like this was even possible. The postmark was real. 10 years old. The very same month. My father disappeared. My name is Emily. I grew up in a small town in Oregon. When I was 22, my father left on a business trip one morning and never came back. His car was found near an old highway, but Daniel Walker was never found. As time passed, people stopped talking about what had happened, and I learned to live as if there were no more questions left to ask. Until that morning. The handwriting on the envelope looked familiar. I recognized it instantly. My father always wrote the letter M, slightly taller than the others. Inside, there was only a single sheet of paper. Emily, if you're reading this, then the letter finally found you. I hope. It wasn't too late. What came next was even stranger. My father asked me to come to the old lighthouse by the coast. Not immediately. Not today. Simply. Whenever this letter reached my hands. At the bottom was a date from 10 years ago. I convinced myself someone had gone to great lengths to play a cruel joke. But that evening, an elderly mailman called me. He told me the letter had been discovered behind the wall of an old mail sorting center during renovations. Somehow, the envelope had slipped between the walls and remained there all those years. He spent weeks tracking down my new address because he wanted to deliver it in person. After that conversation, there was almost no doubt left. 2 days later, I was standing beside the old lighthouse. There was no one there, just a weathered wooden bench and a small metal box attached underneath it. I had never noticed it before. Inside, there was a second envelope. This time, my father had written only a few lines. I knew you'd think to look here. If this letter reached you, then maybe chance really does know how to correct its own mistakes. Next to it was an old key. On the back of the envelope, there was the address of a safe deposit box. The next morning, a bank employee unlocked a small metal compartment for me. Inside were photographs, family records, several videotapes, and a thick folder of documents. It turned out my father had spent years collecting the history of our family. His dream was to pass it all on to me someday so the memory of those who came before us would never disappear. At the very bottom was one last sealed envelope. I opened it. After I got home. Emily, if you're reading these words, then life somehow found a way to keep my promise. I don't know where I'll be tomorrow, so I decided to leave you the most valuable thing I have. Ahead of time. People believe an inheritance is money. They're wrong. The greatest inheritance is memory. As long as you know where you came from, you'll never lose yourself. I read the letter over and over again, and then I realized, for the first time in 10 years, I had stopped searching for the answer to why my father disappeared. Instead, I felt grateful that after all this time, he had finally found a way to speak to me. Sometimes, the words that matter most arrive late. Not because we've been forgotten, but because, only then, are we finally ready to hear them.